Now we welcome in the man behind, the brains behind Metalocalypse and Dethklok and many, many other things, Mr. Brendon Small. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Brian. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for doing this, man. It's a lot of
Absolutely.
fun. It's interesting. Like I thought of you to do the show, but I wasn't sure. Like, should we talk something else? And then I thought, well, we really should talk Dethklok and Metalocalypse because it really had a massive impact on getting a lot of people into heavier music because of the platform that you had. And if you guys don't know, for some reason, you've been hiding under a rock for a long time. Metalocalypse is a fantastic animated show on Adult Swim. It's our man, Mr. Small here, was behind the whole thing. So I guess first of all, where did you come up with the idea for this thing?
It's really funny because I'm a guy who grew up in suburbia and discovered guitar at the age of 14. I had a cool neighbor up the street who's still my good friend, my buddy Renzo, who kind of introduced me to the world of heavy metal, and introduced me to guitar and everything from like King Diamond to to Slayer to Metallica to like classic rock to Blue Oyster Cult to everything all in one day. He taught me. He just showed me his entire library. He had a great record collection, and he showed me how to play guitar. He showed me how to play Iron Man the first day that he showed me guitar chords. I walked away being able to play, like, slide a power chord around. So really important day and friendship. And together we would end up going to music school together, at Berklee College of Music. And then from there, I went on to do stand-up, and I started studying writing for television while I was studying music. I was studying at Emerson College, taking classes on comedy, on script writing. I would have a spec scripts by the end of my stay, and started getting into stand-up. Got into television through a show called Home Movies, and somewhere along the line, I kind of stopped calling myself a musician and started calling myself a comedy writer. But truthfully, I was listening to so much metal and getting acquainted with this stuff that I kind of missed out on during music school. Music school, I'm studying everything from classical to jazz to contemporary, fusion and stuff like that. But I'm falling back in love with my guitar, and I'm falling back in love with heavy metal. And all I'm doing is going and seeing shows, Cannibal Corpse, Nile, anything anyone that would come with me was welcome. So, and I made friends with a guy named Tommy Blotcha, and Tommy is a really super funny writer. And at some point, I kind of had an open door to Adult Swim, and I had a different show that I was kind of going back and forth on, and a buddy of mine said, "I can't believe you're not doing a show about the only thing that you talk about, which is heavy metal." And I said, "I can't believe you had to tell me that." So the next day I got together with Tom, and we started thinking about an idea for this TV show. And it was really simple. It's all kind of in relation to heavy metal and all in relation to Spinal Tap, in that Spinal Tap did the greatest job showcasing a band kind of on its way out, And we thought, okay, well, that means we can't do that story. And Tenacious D kind of is the story of a band that couldn't gain liftoff. Flight of the Conchord is the same kind of a thing. So we thought, what if we did the biggest entertainment act on earth, and built a band from the ground up, in this cartoon world. So that was kind of the genesis. And then building characters, building, exaggerations of real life things that would happen, like destructions at live shows, from stage collapses to, Altamont, so how do you exaggerate that and turn it into comedy and mine this world of kind of, by the way, the same thing that was going on what was going on at the same time was that the world was turning its focus on kind of inept celebrities. Paris Hilton was big. People stopped buying shows from writers. They thought, we don't have to write anything. We can just follow these kind of inept celebrities around and let them kind of guide the way. And that pissed me off. So I was like angry. I thought, let's make fun of the celebrityism, but let's do it with a heavy metal band, something I love. And so all these kind of things started swirling, and the show came out, and then the show did well enough for me to put out records. And the records did well enough for us to go on tour. And I met with Gene Hoglan, before I made the records, and thought, he had just finished his stint with Strapping Young Lad. So he was available. So all this stuff was kind of fortuitous, all kind of came together, and it was a lot of fun work. And, you know, a couple years ago, like 2019 or so, the opportunity came to put the band back together and to make a movie and to kind of start turning it back into a touring entity. And so we're back touring now.
Yeah, I've seen that. I've missed the shows because whenever you're playing in a city that I partially live in, you're never there when I'm there. But we'll figure that out sooner or later.
Figure it out. Yeah.
Excuse me. So I have a question though.
Yeah.
So when you had that fateful day of listening to all this music and learning how to play the guitar, what was your musical background prior to that?
I was excited. Look, I'm a kid from the suburbs who grew up in the 80s. So I really was interested in guitar, and I was interested in Van Halen at the time. I didn't really know much about, I had heard about Metallica. I had heard about, some of the bands that were kind of like creeping out into suburbia. My background was I had taken piano lessons, and I had a little Casio keyboard where I'd sit there and most of the time just sit by myself and write songs or write cool chords that I could try to remember. But beyond that, nothing much. I was and my parents aren't musical. And, but I was really, and I wasn't a good student or anything either. But once I managed to, save up enough money to buy a guitar and start practicing, I noticed that all of my focus would be on the guitar and trying to figure it out. And I also got into, all the crazy guitar players from Yngwie to Vai and Satriani to Jeff Beck, to everybody that touched a guitar, from John Petrucci and any of those guys. And I just became kind of obsessed.
Wow. So when you did Metalocalypse, did you have the idea to have the band be making music for the show as well? Or did that come after you kind of started the show?
No, that was the idea. So I knew that on the previous show I had kind of like a scrappy kind of band inside of a show called Home Movies. But the whole idea was that I never tune my guitar. I don't necessarily play in rhythm. It's all trash, But in my personal life, I was sitting there practicing with the metronome and learning sweep arpeggios and all kinds of crazy stuff. And right before we sold the show, I was asked to write some music for another Adult Swim show, and I turned it around very quickly. It had lots of guitars and harmonies and vocals and all kinds of stuff. And it was, but I turned it around in like a day, and they were all very impressed that I could write music, because most of the guys that work in TV are just TV writers. I had, I guess, a special skill because I'd spent all this time at music school studying music. I even interned at jingle houses in New York where they write the music for commercials. It was like, in the 90s, I was like there where people were smoking cigarettes indoors, recording on 2-inch tape. It was like the 1960s, and ad execs, and I was getting them coffee, and I was trying to figure out, is this what I want to do? Do I want to be this far back in post-production? And the answer was no, I don't want to. I'd rather be the guy directing it. I'd rather be the guy writing the music. I'd rather be the guy acting in the stuff. And so I was formulating these kind of lifelong plans because I saw what it was like working in that field and how competitive it was. I knew that comedy was open. I knew that comedy wasn't super saturated like it is now. I knew that if you had a unique voice, you may stand out. If you had a unique take on comedy, you may stand out. But ultimately, I had this secret trick that I could write music, and I had developed a bag of tricks, favorite chords, studied my heroes, studied everybody from, Brian May to classical music to Yngwie stuff, Baroque chord changes and stuff like that. So I'd kind of put that all in the mix with my love for Cannibal Corpse and Metallica and swirl it all around and come up with something that would kind of be Dethklok.
So when you did the show, what were your expectations of it when it came out? Did you expect it to do well? Did you were you just making it to make it, or did you have like some sort of expectation this thing could take off?
I was hoping that it would, because I thought that the world, I was kind of studying the market a little bit too, knowing that heavy metal is something that always did well. And at the time, especially in 2005, I think was when we sold it, so 25 years ago is when we sold it. 2006 is when we premiered. So in a year, it'll be the 20-year anniversary. But I had a good feeling that if we did this right, if we kind of built out these characters and built out this world and threw some music in there, that it could catch an audience on Adult Swim that was also kind of a growing network at the same time. So I thought ultimately, when I was thinking about the audience, I wasn't thinking like, what's going to be the most number one, primetime show of all time. I thought, what's this show that would appeal to me when I was 14 with my buddy Renzo in his house, discovering guitar, discovering heavy metal. And that's the guy I was talking to. Nobody else. I was talking back to myself and saying, I'm going to give this kid a gift. And hopefully there are other kids like me out there that maybe probably aren't doing well in school, probably don't even know about guitar yet, don't know that they may fall in love with it one day. And hopefully give them something that I got from my friend, which was a brand new obsession that would be with me the rest of my life. And so that's kind of to me, I always thought I was talking back to myself.
Yeah, and like all great art, music, movies, whatever, usually if you're doing it for yourself and you're making it for yourself that you like it, that's usually when things work out the best.
Yes, it's hard to talk people into money for yourself, though. So I had to. But fortunately, at the time, at that time with Adult Swim, they were open to the idea of building a lot of shows, and I knew that I had already had a show, so I got to look at kind of from my vantage point what worked, what didn't, and why. And I was slowly trying to correct all the things that didn't work in my previous show in how it was delivered to the audience, what the advertising campaign was, what it looked like, what it sounded like. I had a lot more control on Metalocalypse than I did in the previous shows, and all those little tiny things are kind of working in our favor. So the show's gaining success. Our premiere was like one of the highest premieres of all time at the time for the network. So it was all kind of working. We had also leaked a short little clip on YouTube, which was brand new. My dog's coming in, and it was YouTube was brand new in the year 2026. So we leaked a trailer, and I could see that it was being watched, and I could see that it was gaining traction. So from my point of view, I thought all this stuff is working. It's all going in the right direction. And I think by the time our fourth episode aired, and we were still in production, working as hard as we could, we got a pickup for our second season. So it was all looking good. And then the next thing was to finish our season and for me to go and make this first record using bits and pieces of all these songs. Because the challenge for myself as a writer was, can I write these episodes? Can I stay on top of production, and can I write music for every single episode, unique music for every single episode? So that's the challenge for me as the musician part. So that was the trick.
Was the plan all along to make records as well as do this show, or did that come later?
It was, it all kind of came in one. I remember sitting kind of like a Starbucks and in Hollywood with Tommy and thinking, okay, look. If I write unique music for every single episode, then at the end of the season, I can probably take my favorite pieces and elongate them and put them on a record, record the whole thing. I'd have to get a great drummer because I'm programming terrible drums in the first season. And so I need like someone who could validate our project too. And Gene Hoglan definitely validated the project and just added so much creativity. But the idea was, okay, if I can write this music, then I can put out a record. If I put out a record, I could perform it maybe. But how would I perform an animated show then? But I had the Gorillaz to look at. And I thought, what was working with the Gorillaz and what wasn't? And I saw probably an earlier like DVD of a live concert where they were behind scrims and they were projecting animation on the scrims. So you got to see kind of warped shadows. And I thought, I think the band needs to be in front of the players are the music, this music is kind of difficult to play. So I think the idea of them playing needs to be kind of on the stage, but still they're a pit band. The real show is behind them. So showcase the musicians in the slightest way possible, make it mysterious, make them shadowed figures, project the animation behind. How would you even line that up? Well, you'd probably have to send a click track to the drummer's headset and go from there. So all that was in the amount of time that it took me to explain it to you. That was the thought process. It was very simple. And then the question is, how do you actually do that? And how do you talk people into opening up their, bank accounts so that we can start doing that stuff? How can I use their money for art? So, but it all worked. It all kind of worked in our first, and we would go through trials and tribulations. Our first tour wasn't like a proper tour. It was a college campus tour where we played with a band that wasn't even the same genre. and I was learning a lot. I was like, I'd done a lot of stand up, I'd done a lot of performing, but I hadn't, played my guitar in front of people as often as I would end up doing. So there was a lot of learning. I would drop my guitar at times. I would hit the wrong channel and take a solo on a clean tone. Just terrible destruction throughout, but managed to make it all work. And now is kind of the culmination of all those years of trials and tribulations. And now we have a really fun, entertaining show.
Yeah, it's great. I remember the early shows too. It was kind of fun because you guys were kind of dark and obviously highlighting the video part of it. But it's pretty cool. One thing though, why I think that it works so well, and I mean, look, every single metalhead knows the show and they love the show, is because the music is very unique. Like, while it's kind of more or less death metal-ish, obviously they're kind of a death metal band, but the music to me, and you mentioned all of your different backgrounds, the classical and all these sort of things, and that's why the music is much different than really any other death metal record or band out there, because you've got those crazy guitar solos, and that stuff could be on, like you said, Yngwie. It could be on an Yngwie record or anybody's record, kind of. So, which isn't the way death metal normally is, because normally it's just super heavy. There's not a lot of solos, and certainly not kind of in that old school European style. So when you were putting together the music, like, what was the background of that? Or it's just like, hey, I like the way this sounds, and that's what it's going to be.
You know what? A lot of it is personal preference. It's kind of funny when I write music for projects outside of Dethklok, people go, hey, that sounds like Dethklok. And then I go, you know what? I think it sounds like me is what it ends up sounding like. It's just a bunch of personal preferences. I really love that. I love Mozart. I love Fire and Brimstone. I like this Requiem is so dark and evil, and there's so much just like heaven and hell, and I love that about Yngwie. I love that about Brian May from Queen. I love all of that kind of traditional harmony, and we studied those classes at Berklee College of Music. So it all started, like, I started kind of collecting a thing called figured bass, where the bass line isn't normal, in classical, it isn't always like in unison with what everything else is doing. It sometimes is highlighting one note underneath the chord. And that, to me, I was like, it all clicked. I was like, that's what Yngwie's doing. That's what Brian May is doing. That's what Mozart's doing. And so how can I do this in heavy metal? How can I get this really cool harmonic movement happening, and then sing about stupid bullshit on top of it? So I'm trying to satisfy my like musical desires and my, and the needs and wants of comedy on the show too. So, and then I thought about Metallica. I thought when they were like militaristic, and like And Justice for All was the record that came out when I was getting into metal, and of course I'd go back and listen to everything else. But the militaristic kind of temperament of that record, to me, was a big deal. The crazy odysseys they would go on, all that stuff was really appealing to my ears. So I would start these excavation projects and trying to figure out how they derive one thing or the next, or just go like, it's James Hetfield following his ears, and going through all these, just following down this kind of musical, labyrinth. And that's what's so cool about thrash metal too, is that if it goes fast enough, you can kind of like take all these left and right turns, almost like you're on a crazy, maze, and it can spit you out in a completely different place. And that's what I love about thrash metal, from Anthrax to SOD to Slayer to Exodus, to all those dudes who are kind of building the sound. That was also appealing to me. So my question to myself is, how can I build something that kind of lives in relation to the show and also lives outside of the show? And can I make actual music at the same time that would be memorable enough to warrant being listened to?
Yeah. We're talking about the song Awaken, which is one of the signature Dethklok and Metalocalypse songs. Everything about this song, I think, is brilliant. The vocals, the lyrics. I had to do a lot of digging to figure out what this stuff was. And is it fictional? Is it real? It's like Norwegian lore or something?
Yeah. We kind of start in Finland in that episode. So that's another thing, is you hear all those European things, and we literally had a globe in our office, and we would spin the globe and we'd stop somewhere and go, where's this episode take place? Reykjavik, Iceland. I've never been there. What can I learn about Reykjavik, Iceland? Okay, spin it again. What's going on in Finland? Okay, well, I know Children of Bodom are from Finland, so let's think about that. So it's kind of like an inspiration of Children of Bodom is inside of that song too, because you've got keyboards, you've got that European kind of flair. And then, also, talking about death metal, I always was careful to call Dethklok an extreme metal band because I wanted to cherry pick from what I liked about the entire genre and build a different subgenre, or something like that. So I thought, no one's telling me what to do musically on this show. There was no safeguard between what I thought was interesting musically and what would end up on the show. There was nothing in between. So whatever I was in, like in my little tiny studio, I would go and just come back with something. I think this is interesting enough, and musically, I think it can drive the show. And so Awaken was one of those songs. And there's a character called Musta Krakish. I made up that word. I don't know what it is. It's a troll that lives in the lake. I knew about Lake Bodom. I knew that there were like murders there. I knew that's why Children of Bodom. I thought this lake is interesting. And how much more kind of lore and fiction can I throw into this thing? And can we build a cool character out of that? A cool creature? Can we, like, what can we do here? And so, so that was the whole idea. It's all most of like the word Metalocalypse. It's invented. It didn't exist until we started smashing words together. And there's a lot of that in the show. And it's my heroes are Metallica and Dr. Seuss. So what are you going to do? Make up a bunch of words.
That's where Metallica came from. It's a word that doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's a word. Seriously, yeah. So being Metallica is an influence. Just that word alone is an influence. Yeah.
So with this specific song, did the song come first or the episode come first, or was it kind of at the same time?
That's actually, it's funny that I had probably about 4 or 5 kind of demos that I had kind of because when I finally pitched this show to Adult Swim, they said, this sounds great, because all I said was, this is a show about an extreme metal band. They're the biggest act on earth. There's going to be death and destruction, the big, fire, blood, tits, and the, comedy, all that shit smashed together. How can I make all this work and be totally entertaining to me when I was 14? So they said, this sounds great. Can you write this up? And just so we can kind of get the ball rolling on this. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if I can even write it up yet, because I don't know enough about the band or anything. I had to go and sit down and write a bunch of demos and tune my guitar lower and read articles on Guitar Magazine, and listen to Michael Amott talk from, and figure out what he's doing on his guitar. Because all that kind of, again, that kind of European flair was definitely going to be put into this American death metal world, a Metallica world, all this kind of, from Eastern Europe to, Scandinavia to wherever they're playing metal. I was going to try to pull all those resources. And this song was one of those songs where I had some riff ideas, and I collected them all, and I just thought, this is energetic. I'm interested in where this song's going to go. Can I build enough of this song out into the episode to make it feel like there's a full song? So normally I have 30 seconds to 45 seconds, maybe a minute. If I really carve a lot of episode landscape away, maybe I can get 2 minutes in, but then I don't have that much comedy and that much character. So I'm always trying to balance all that stuff out. So this was a song that I think I had the verse, chorus, and bridge kind of worked out. And once I got to the recording studio with Gene, I would sit there and, build out the rest of the demo and get the song, in the shape that it is on Death Album 1. And it's something that we still play in our set. In fact, we have a whole, we've got a whole Australian tour that's kind of named after the song. It's Awaken Australia, and we're going to Australia in April, and we'll be going all throughout from the east to west coast. Yeah.
Yeah, that opening riff is so great. So classic. So how does it make you feel that literally every single band that we've been talking about today became huge fans of the show, and a lot of them have done voiceover work for the show? Like, what does that feel like?
It's really okay. So those bands doing voices on the show, I'll talk about that first, because yes, King Diamond, Metallica, George from Cannibal Corpse has a character that had a whole arc, and so Scott Ian and Gary Holt and Exodus, all those guys that I love, they all ended up coming to play. And the idea was, how do you make, because a worry early on would be like, hey, are you guys making fun of metal? Because fuck you and all that stuff. And I was like, yeah. I know that feeling. I get you. You're protective. You should be. It's good. I am too. but what if everyone's all on the same page and we're all joking around together? So that was something I wanted to make sure that we were doing. So getting Metallica to be in the first episode and for them to be funny and to be able to make fun of, just to play characters and to make fun of types and things like that was really exciting to me. But ultimately, they were just meant to be characters in the show and to express themselves on a comedic level, which they don't always get to do. But we all know that every metalhead has a real sense of humor too. What are they going to do on the bus? They're going to watch Monty Python or The Simpsons or whatever. Everyone needs levity in their lives. So that was really exciting to get them, to talk them into this and to get them all to say yes and to kind of build this thing where we could keep on bringing people in and have my musical heroes from the metal world or to, from the guitar world, from Steve Vai to Satriani, do voices and be funny and participate in the comedy. As far as them liking it, it's the coolest thing if any of these guys like any of this stuff. To me, it's not expected. I don't expect them to be on their radar, but if they do like it, to me, it's the most exciting thing I could possibly think of.
Oh, look, I don't know any metal that doesn't love that show. And you mentioned Spinal Tap earlier, and that's a really good example of something that is so funny and so out there. But again, there's not one single musician that doesn't love that movie and hasn't gone through at least one or two of the things that occurred in there. And I think people love the humor of this. And obviously the music is serious and it's really good. And, you know what you're doing. You're a metalhead. So I think so one thing about metal fans I've noticed is, we see what's real and what's not real. And when you watch Metalocalypse or you listen to Dethklok, you go, this is real. And this is made by people that love metal. And even though it's kind of making fun of things, it's doing it in the right way that we can all appreciate.
Well, yeah, and what we're making fun of really is celebrityism, and that's kind of like, it's an arc from the first episode to the end. It's almost like, this band that starts out kind of worshiping the Church of Money and then kind of realizes that they've built their own church of heavy metal. And that's what the whole final movie is about. So we land the whole story that starts from the very first frame of the first episode to that thing. And to us, and hopefully, aside from just commenting on the state of metal, which we'll do occasionally, it's mostly about, can we build characters that can stand alone also, from Nathan Explosion to Pickles to Murderface to all these guys that can that we can know well enough, in a classic TV sense, that we can kind of anticipate their feelings and thoughts about a subject being introduced or something. And the cool thing about all that stuff, that part of it, the character part, is that when I go and meet fans of the show, they just want to they either want me to do the voices or they want to do their impressions of the voices. And I'd rather hear their impression of the voices. And usually they're pretty good.
What I found funny is when I, talked to my friends about the show, everybody had a different favorite character. Like, it wasn't all just Nathan. It was a whole, I think actually, if I go back and remember well enough, Pickles might be the most popular amongst my friends, but everybody had a different character that they loved, which I thought was really cool because there were so many unique characters that you were able to do in this thing.
That was the idea up front is, can we give them all like literally unique voices, from Skwisgaard's botched Scandinavian, which doesn't sound anything like Scandinavian. It sounds like Popeye the Sailor Man, to Pickles' Midwestern, snappy drawl, to Nathan's guttural thing. How can you make them all sound different and unique? And that's kind of, because since I play a lot of the characters, I'm usually asking myself, can I speak in the lower part of my voice, in my normal speaking voice, and twang it up a little bit, or can I get a cleaner, more baritone Skwisgaard thing? And can I what can I do to make all these voices sound different? So that to me was a unique thing, because the previous show I did was pretty much we used our own voices and just improvised a lot, and so we wanted to bring in improv, bring in some like kind of natural, spur of the moment comedy inside of our recordings as well.
And how did you come up with a vocal style? Because it's definitely unique.
I had no idea what I was doing, and eventually I developed more kind of like I had developed a more consistent take as the episodes went on and the records went on. So Nathan starts out kind of low and like close mics, and he starts getting a little bit more screamy as I start doing more live performances and need that guttural thing to carry over the band a little bit more. So I have no idea what I was doing. Just like with guitar, I'm figuring it out and white knuckling it until I get it right, and then settling on something where I go, look, even though this is comedy and all that stuff, am I embarrassed or am I, proud to put this out? And if it kind of gets over to, if the needle starts moving over in the right direction, then I start giving myself the thumbs up if I do. But yeah, I could critique all of it a lot.
Yeah, and I know that you were working on this movie for a long time. I remember a whole bunch of us were involved trying to get this thing
Yeah,
made.
yeah. No, the community came together, and that's all that stuff. And there was a time where it seemed very bleak, but truthfully, all of that help from the community, from you, from Metallica, from all kinds of people, all that stuff did go into the ultimate. I mean, it went into that swell that moved the needle to us getting to this place, and through that. So thank you for all that. To anyone that helps and spread the word, that all resonated and that all added up to that movie.
Well, like I said, we all love the show, and I think it was important. I know it was important for you, and I think it was important for us as fans to kind of finish it out, because the show didn't really end like you. It just kind of went away. And with the movie, you were able to kind of tie up some of the loose ends. And does this mean that this is the end of Metalocalypse as far as TV show, movie, or is there more that might come?
My answer is it's the end of that particular storyline between the band and this kind of Illuminati that's kind of tracking them. So could they have other adventures in the future? Potentially. Could they make more music in the future? Potentially. The thing that really, I think, was not the most fun for me was just kind of leaving a project unfinished. And it's really hard because these things, they cost a lot of money. You need a big team of people. And I've been working with that same core group of people over at Titmouse. And I've added a lot of great people to the team over the years and really great collaborators. So this stuff, I talk about a lot of this stuff and how we got it started and everything, but it really is a huge collaboration. All the way to like the crew that we take out on the road. Those guys are like part of the group. If I get a laugh in the voice of Nathan, they're all getting a laugh together. We're all kind of like, working together to make everything work. Or if it's a badass moment and we see people really reacting to the show, which we do, our audiences are some of the best metal crowds you'll ever see because, they get to laugh. They get to straddle the line of, is this comedy or do I get to take this music seriously? And that's my favorite place for the audience to be.
Well, thank you for doing it because it really did bring a whole new batch of people that were not into heavy metal. They got into it because they thought the show was really cool and the characters were fun, and then they got into the music. I've heard that from a lot of places where that was the gateway for them. It's like, I didn't really know much about metal, but I thought the show was funny, or I was the biggest Adult Swim fan, and they became fans and went back and, discovered the Slayers and the Metallicas and all that. So thank you for doing that and helping help evolve metal, really.
That's the nicest thing coming from you. That's the nicest thing I could possibly hear. And ultimately, my favorite thing is when I go and meet fans and they say I got into metal because of Metalocalypse. I didn't know anything about it, but I saw that maybe you had this voice on the show, you had that voice on the show, and I got to go on my own detective trail of finding out and discovering. And that's so much. It's so nice, especially if you're how it feels when you're a teenager and you don't have anything, you don't have any money. You don't get to make any decisions, but you get to choose your music, and that to me was everything. That was like I felt like I was the king of the world because I got to choose what I listened to or save up for and make a, like I would go special order Cacophony albums or, like whatever it was that I was doing in my local record store in Salinas, California. That ownership, that feeling of empowerment that heavy metal gives us, I think is the ultimate gift,
100%. Agree 100%. Well, thank you so much for creating this amazing project, this amazing band. And thank you so much for doing this. Much appreciated.
Absolutely. Anytime, Brian. Anytime. Yeah.
All right, good. We'll get you on again. We'll talk something other than Metalocalypse.
I'll talk whatever you want. You tell me.
Sounds good, my friend. Thank you so much.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for having me.
You got to stay on for a couple minutes.